Hello, my name is Andrea Paratto, and I am a certified dementia practitioner, and I'm here with Natalie Hanson, who is also a certified dementia practitioner. And Natalie and I thought it would be very important for us to discuss the different stages associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia because there is so much happening within each stage. So going from this stage to the next stage is even more significant changes. A lot of significant changes, physically and cognitively, but a lot of physiological changes are happening at this stage as well. So the brain's still trying to work, but it's struggling. It's struggling to understand the world around them in all areas. They have very deep, rich moments, but they're fewer and fewer, and they're getting harder to see. Those really alert, engaging moments where you have that really good, meaningful conversation. Those are going to start to get fewer and fewer and fewer and less and less and less. My fine details, my fine motor skills are starting to fail. My ability to hold utensils is starting to fail. When I reach this stage, my ability to understand the world around me is kind of at like a 12 to 18 month old. It's hard for me to understand. I have a hard time with speech. Yeah. I have a hard time feeding myself. I have a hard time putting clothes on. I'll put them on upside down, inside out, backwards.
Or wear many
layers of clothing. Toileting becomes difficult. I don't understand the mechanisms of toileting anymore. I don't understand flushing and wiping and caring for myself if I have incontinence issues. Like that's really starting to become a struggle. But there's some other stuff that's happening too. Aside from slowing down in all areas, if you try to get me to go too fast, I'm shutting down.
It's not happening.
It's not happening. I'm shutting down. You try to get me to go somewhere, like lead me by moving, I'm going to feel like you're pulling me over and I'm going to fall. So the more you push or pull, the more I'm pushing or pulling away. I'm resisting because I don't feel safe, because I think that there's some things happening with my vision deficits, double vision, depth perception is starting to become a struggle, right? So I'll just become frightened and I'll just become immobile and I'll just latch on to the first item of furniture or something that I can see that's stable and is going to make me feel safe, right?
Patterning and carpeting can become difficult.
That a black spot could look like a hole.
Yeah. So with my experience, when that carpet changes, and if it's changing from a light color to a dark color, the feet stop. Because I'm not walking into that hole. Because of that depth,
that transition. Okay, so like from a tile, and what if it's like a really crazy busy tile?
Yeah,
on the floor. That's, I think, even worse because you're having so many of these visual disturbances, and I can imagine it's really hard to find your balance when the floor looks distorted.
Yeah,
and these things are happening. We see our clients that we work with run into walls, get stuck in corners. Trip over furniture, not even see that it's there. Sit down in chairs that aren't even there because they think that there's a surface there. So there's a lot of visual deficits happening within this stage, losing that fine motor in their eye function.
Yeah.
But they tend to keep the big visual skills, right? So they'll see like the big
picture,
things.
but they won't see what's right there in front of them. That's when the tripping and the falling tends to start happening too, a lot more, because they're not seeing what is right in front of them on the floor.
Or eating.
Oh yeah.
Like when you have a mug in front of them, but instead of grabbing for the mug, they're grabbing over here because they're fine.
And that's when it gets hard for them to eat because they're reaching for the food or the plate that's
in front of them where you think it should be.
Right.
But when you actually
think it should be over here.
Through their visual disturbances or deficits that they're having. So yeah, they misjudge distances. Sometimes they'll even try to pick at the floor. When they see patterns in carpet or different colors, especially if there's like white speckles, they think that there's garbage on the floor.
Yeah.
And they'll sit there and bend over and try to pick it up. And at this stage, their gait and their balance isn't as good as it used to be. So there is that fear and that risk of falling. So we know, we've seen them get stuck in corners. They get stuck behind doors. They'll get stuck in a room, and they can't get out. And of course, tripping over those large objects, not noticing things in their paths. If they don't see something, they don't know it exists. So if they can't see, say, a sliding glass door with the window in it, if they can't see the window, they're running. They're gonna walk right through it, or at least attempt to walk right through it. They're less and less interested in eating. We said this before in the previous stages, but it's really become significant here, right? I mean,
and I think part of that is they are losing that ability, those fine motor abilities, so they're losing that ability also to pick up a fork.
And I think some of it has to do to attention span.
Yeah.
Being able to sit there for a half an hour, forever how long it takes to eat, and staying on task. And not having something distract them and I need to go look at that, or I need to go, touch that or feel that. And so they don't sit long enough to eat a full meal. So they kind of tend to more graze. Oh, here's a candy bar, I'll eat that. And look over here, they left some bananas out, I'll eat one of those. But not actually just sit down and eat a full meal. And this is normal. It's not exactly easy to watch, and you think, they're just going to waste away because they're not eating anymore. They are eating if you provide that ability to just graze and eat, provide those healthy snacks for them to eat throughout the day, so that that they're at least eating something. And like you said, if they eat dessert first, by golly, let them eat dessert first, because at least they're getting some calories. Yeah. The Ensure shakes and the Boost shakes have been really successful in these stages too, because they're chocolatey and they're sweet and they're yummy, but they're packed full of vitamins and protein and stuff that they'll need to kind of help maintain that weight.
I think, like you said, it is important to remember that they are going to be grazy. Your idea of sitting down to eat is not the same as their idea of sitting.
Right.
It's no longer there.
So when we talked earlier about taking down that expectation, you're going to have to take down your expectations in all areas, especially when it comes to something as simple as dining, because you cannot expect your loved one to sit there through a whole full meal and eat everything on their plate like they did, either previous to the dementia or when it just first started, because it's not going to be the same. So like you said, you have to bring those expectations down a little bit and just know that their finger foods are great, or sandwiches, where if they're going to get up and walk around, it's something they can walk around with and eat at the same time. Yeah. So at least they're still getting those calories and stuff and that nutrition, but at the same time, you're meeting that need to wander.
Yeah. And the need to wander is great.
It is.
It is.
I mean, they're getting exercise and they're wandering around, and it allowing them that need to wander is a good thing.
To me, it seems like it's their way of soothing whatever is happening. If I'm able to wander and do that, it's their self-soothing mechanism.
Kind of like when people rock.
Exactly.
Or sometimes they hum, because you can feel that vibration of the humming, and so it's self-soothing.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. Interestingly enough, they will get injured. So say they walk through a doorway and scrape their elbow. And of course, we know their skin's a little thinner now. And so skin tears are pretty prominent. And they could just be sitting there bleeding and not even recognize the fact that they have this wound on their arm. And then, family stuff. Well, what did you do? And they don't even remember how they injured themselves.
Or, you even know that it's there.
Or that it's there. So because they have that limited body awareness, they don't tend to know what is bothering them or where on their body it may be bothering them. So they may sense pain, but not know where on their body that pain is coming from. And of course, it takes more time again. It's we're staging up. So it is going to take more time to process things. You're going to have to break things down even to smaller pieces to get them to execute a task or understand. I noticed that they tend to look down a lot when they walk. Yeah. And I think that contributes a lot to walking into objects of and doorways and and walls and stuff. But I noticed that when working with the stage 6 who do have a hard time making contact, because again, there's so much distracting in their world around them, that if you actually look at them and say, hey, look at me, and when they make eye contact, that is your moment to engage.
Yeah.
And they can actually maybe pay attention and understand that simple task. Don't give them a list of all the things you want them to do right then because you found that moment. But if it's just sit down, you can't stand next to them because they don't know where your body is or where that voice is, and they can't see you. And so if you're standing in front of them and you actually make that eye contact and you say, hey, can you sit down for me? It's going to click. Okay. It makes sense because I'm actually able to pay attention to you and I'm actually listening in this moment.
Yeah.
So we have to just jump in and get in that moment right away. You want to use hand over hand. This has actually been very successful in actually retraining the ability to feed oneself when just simply using hand over hand, or if they're in that frustration where maybe it's hard to get them to self-initiate feeding. And the hand over hand is just literally holding your hand over their hand while they complete a task, correct? I mean, you can do this while brushing teeth, actually holding your hand over their hand. And helping them initiate the motions, or something as simple as feeding, or holding a cup. Sometimes, they're holding the cup, but they're just not quite getting the steps, and you help lift the cup up. And then once it's to their mouth, it clicks and they know what to do. So sometimes hand over hand is really, really helpful. And using your voice to engage, using your voice to encourage. But you want to limit your talking. You can't just stand there and have like this really long-winded, one-sided conversation, because I feel like that would really be hard to process, hard to keep up with. And you lost me at the first sentence because I'm clearly unable to remember instant recall. So this is where the families come in, I think, when we talk about using what is calming to them. Right? You want to explore what's going to help settle them down in that moment. So you have talked about information from families and how important that is. And I think this is one of those things.
Yeah.
Right? Finding what is going to soothe them. Or on the flip side of that, what's going to upset them? What do they absolutely not tolerate?
It can come down to the type of music that really upsets them. I
once took care of somebody who a certain type of music, if you played it, kind of got them going. And so you would have to avoid that type of music for them.
And on the flip side of that, I had a lady who would never shower, but if you played country music, which was her favorite, and danced your way into the bathroom with her,
she'd shower.
She would just shower all day long because we were singing and having a good time, and it wasn't as scary because it was
something she enjoyed.
Yeah, and it was fun. So how can we help during this stage? I think that there's a few tips that we can talk about that will kind of be similar to when we were in the stage 5, but I think that we have to take it another step, obviously, further.
Slowing down again.
Slowing down. Slow it down. We're always in the need to rush. It's our human nature these days. But we have to slow down.
Yeah. It takes them longer to figure things out, to do things, to process anything that we're saying or trying to get them to do. So
I feel like if you just took an egg and scrambled it, that this would be their world. Very scrambled. Very hard to discern. Very hard to figure out. And like you said, process. And you just have to slow everything down. Using those automatics when possible. You talked about those automatic greetings, not the what's up and those type of greetings. And breaking those tasks down, right, into those smaller pieces. One step at a time. You can't hand me my jeans and say, here, put these on, because there is steps. We don't think about this because to us, this is an automatic function, right? Getting dressed, taking a shower, getting ready for the day, eating a meal, all of these ADLs or activities of daily living are automatic for us. We've learned these, we know how to do them. And then when we get Alzheimer's and dementia,
we have to relearn.
We have to relearn how to do them. And so when you give me a pair of pants and say, here, put these on, you have to remember the steps it takes for you to simply put on a pair of pants. Even though it's automatic, there's steps to it, right? You have to lift up one leg. You have to put one leg in. Then you have to kind of either sit down or balance yourself to put the other leg in. Then you have to pull them up. And there are steps to doing that. And we all have routines, right? And we all do things a certain way. When you get in the shower, we normally do the same routine when we shower every single time we shower.
Right.
So my challenge would be to try to take your shower backwards. Try to do those steps in a different order and see how many times you miss a step because you're not sequencing in the routine that you've always known. And so I think it's very important, like you said earlier, to keep those same routines and habits as long as possible. And if we're starting with that at a stage 3, we need to continue that through all of the stages, keeping those routines, keeping those habits, because it's going to go a long way in their ability to maintain some form of independence because we are able to do it the way they've done it. And so it's easier for them to get it.
And I think also when you're asking somebody to complete a task, sometimes if you can just demonstrate what you're asking for them to do will also help.
I used to have a stool in a client's room, in a client's bathroom, so that I could show them what the task was I needed them to complete because words weren't working. And so I needed to use visuals, right? So I put a stool next to the toilet and I would sit down and pat the toilet seat and ask the client to sit down with me. And that is how we initiated sitting. But they needed the visual
to see
over the verbal.
Because they weren't comprehending
the verbal.
Sit.
Exactly. And so visual cues go a very long way. So yes, demonstrating what you want them to do instead of telling them, I think it is going to be a lot easier. And of course, we, as I don't know if this is just a human thing, when somebody doesn't understand what we say, we tend to talk louder and slower, like that's going to make them get it. And we'll do this to clients with Alzheimer's and dementia, not realizing that we're even doing it, and it's not helping.
Right.
I don't think it helps at all, really. So if they're not getting it when you say it the first time or two, saying it louder and slower isn't going to help. Give them that visual. They need that visual so that they can get it. And I think it's going to help. It's going to help with those tasks. It's going to help complete those tasks a lot easier. One of the things that you always say, meet them where they are.
Yes.
Right? So if we start where they are, they can't well, I guess what I'm trying to say is transitioning from one task to another is really hard.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it takes a long time. So that comes back to that, meet them where they are. Right?
Right.
Because if you can gradually shift those gears and their thought process, instead of just trying to go from one task to another so quickly, you're going to limit that frustration, right? I feel.
Right.
And we do this with just from like dining to going to their apartment per se. So we're in a dining room and we're eating and you can't, okay, we're going and just go.
Right.
Because they don't, and they'll ask you the whole time, where are we going? What are we going? What are we doing? Why are we going here? What's happening? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? But if you actually sat down and said, hey, I see you're done eating. When you're all complete, how about we go back to your apartment? You can lay down and take a nice nap. Oh, that sounds wonderful. And now we're talking about it so that when we go to do that transition, it's a lot, I think it's easier because they're more understanding.
And they know what to expect. I think that's huge. Again, that hand over hand guidance for movement, pointing with your other hand for direction indication is huge in order to let them know where they're going or what the expectation of where you want them to go is.
Use your voice. Use your voice to engage and encourage. That's huge too. And of course, use what is calming to them. Right?
Yeah.